Antonio Reeves had a breakout game for the New Orleans Pelicans, and it actually has a bigger impact on the Pels season than you may think. I'll break down what it means for New Orleans going forward and what Reeves did well in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you all on this Thursday. Oh boy. Day after the Pelicans lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 128-100. I'm laughing probably in some sort of defense mechanism here because we all need to laugh. We'll get into the injuries in the next segment. Let's focus on the positives to start today's show, and that was Antonio Reeves having a breakout game, and I actually think there's bigger implications from that performance than you might realize. We're going to talk about it in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time is my go-to ticketing app now. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason. Don't forget the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. You can sign up over at lockedondaily.com. Scroll down till you see the Locked On Pelicans logo. Click on that. So let's get into this one. There are actually takeaways from this game. Yeah, the top 8 guys for New Orleans did not play in this one, and I've got a wild stat for you in the next segment. But Antonio Reeves did. And Antonio Reeves played almost 40 minutes in this game, and he scored 34 points. Now, New Orleans lost by 28, but you had kind of a coming out party for Antonio Reeves, and this is important. And by the way, if you're an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans, you know I was a big Antonio Reeves guy going into the NBA draft. Thought maybe the Pelicans would try and sign him as an undrafted free agent, maybe get him on a two-way. They took him in the second round, signed him to an actual deal with the team, and he finally got his first real minutes in this one. And yes, it was a blowout, so who knows how hard Cleveland was trying, but he showed that he could play. And I think that's the most important thing here. Only 4 rookies have scored over 30 in an NBA game this season, and Antonio Reeves is included in that. It was 3 others until him. That's a really good performance. 34 points, you don't get there as a fluke. The most points ever scored off the bench for the Pelicans is Jose Alvarado from, I think, 2 or 3 seasons ago. This is a pretty big deal. 34 points on 25 shot attempts, 4 of 12 from 3. So that number's not great, but he took the attempts. 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, no turnovers for him in this game whatsoever. That was really important. When you watch this guy play, you see what this team needs. And that's why I think this is so big. And this is for a larger discussion that we'll get into next week because we'll have some, a little bit of time off with Thanksgiving in there. I want to look at roster construction and can this team really play the way that they would like it to? And I wonder if the answer to that is just straight up a no. This team took 31 threes in a game that Zion and Ingram didn't play, right? Like you can take more threes than that. Or maybe you can't if the players just aren't three-point shooters, right? Sometimes it's that simple as that. But to take 12 three-pointers, and it's funny because Antonio Reeves all made him from like the left wing, and that's it. But to take 12 shows he can be a shooter. So if you want to play that style where you do hoist more threes, Antonio Reeves is going to be a guy that you need to play. Really, it kind of comes down to that. You also saw him get to the rim. The Pelicans do not do a good job of getting the ball inside and trying to score in the paint. They've regularly been blown out in terms of the points in the paint battle. It was 58-54 tonight, partially because Antonio Reeves was getting down low and trying to score that way. Having a guard, a player on the perimeter that wants to get inside and score at the rim and not just take mid-range jumpers is good. He only took 2 shots outside of the paint inside of the 3-point line. Now, he had about 2 other longer jumpers in the paint, which aren't good shots either, but you can kind of live with a rookie making some of those, choices in the beginning, partially because he was actually getting into the restricted area. when Zion comes back, when the rest of this team comes back and you still want to play a certain way, Antonio Reeves is going to be the type of guy that I think will help you. And this is the type of game that makes you go, why wasn't he playing earlier? And I think that's a valid question. They had Jalen Noel, who was waived because they signed Alfred Payton, and we'll look at that in the next segment. I was happy to see Alfred Payton out there on the court. But Jalen Noel was not great for New Orleans. Now, they used him as a point guard, different role than what Antonio Reeves did, and they desperately need a point guard, and you saw some of that with Alfred Payton out there. But Antonio Reeves should have been getting minutes. And this is why in some of these blowout losses where they don't play guys like Karlo Makovic or Antonio Reeves, and those were the two guys really just not getting minutes even in blowouts, that you go, wait, why not? See what you have in them. Because it took the top 8 guys being out for New Orleans for him to really get significant run when they lost by 40 the other night. And he started to get some minutes in that game, but it's because of injuries. But there were other times when you could have maybe thrown him out there and seen what you had in him. And that's an important thing. Yes, they see, Will Green and the rest of the team sees them in practice more so than we do, significantly more. So they have more of a read on these players, but that's still different than a game. And so putting Antonio Reeves out there, I do think is a really important thing. For a team that's been struggling with turnovers, and they had some turnovers right in the beginning of the game that they clamped down on that to finish with only 11, to have a guy that can be a high usage guy go and attack and not just kind of default to mid-range jumpers is a really important thing. We'll get more into the mid-range shot when it comes to Brandon Boston Jr., let's say, over in the third segment here when we look at some of the other play. But Antonio Reeves having a breakout game fits the way that this team wants to play. I don't think all of the players do. Right? Does Jamal Cain fit what they want to do? Does Javonte Green truthfully fit what they want to do on offense? He was 3 of 8 from the field. He took just 3 threes and at one point looked scared to shoot. No. Now, you're going to play Javonte Green for other things, but Antonio Reeves is a guy that you can play for offense and a guy that will fit alongside Brandon Ingram, will fit alongside Zion Williamson, work in conjunction with DeJounte Murray, I actually think pretty well. Can play with basically anyone on this team, it feels like, and to go out and kind of do it in the volume that he did and have the performance that he did, that's a breakout game and a guy that should be in the rotation going forward and should be getting more minutes even when everybody returns and is healthy and fits what they want to do. You're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. You have a guy that does exactly what you need to do. They should have been playing him probably. They definitely need to be playing him more now. And I'm glad that we had this opportunity for a breakout game. If you're looking for a bright spot in a 28-point defeat, and they're lucky it was only 28 points, one point it was 34, there you go. This actually could be a bigger deal if New Orleans wants to go on a run and get back into playoff contention. And we're going to look at maybe on Friday, we'll see, maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week, what that might take. And I think that's going to be an important part of all of it. So coming up next, I just got to share some insane stats with y'all. Like just absolutely wild numbers in terms of salary and injuries. All of that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time, my go-to ticketing app. The reason I love Game Time is because all of the features they have, and because you can use it for all events, concerts, comedy, other shows, not just sports. Game Time now has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams and events in person even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of the other features that I really like here is the all-in pricing. You can toggle this up front, and when you do that, there's no surprise fees at checkout. You're just going to see the total amount in the little cart up front with everything. If you're going to a venue you haven't been to before, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And they have the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. So now is always the best time to buy tickets on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Yes, there are important takeaways, even in bad losses and even when nobody is playing. There's always something to be learned from this, and that's why we cover it here. Not just saying this team sucks and you shouldn't watch or anything like that. There's plenty of reasons to watch basketball. And also, if you like basketball, just watch it. I do. I'm enjoying. Look, I have fun watching all of this stuff. If you want to hear more about the team, about the league, go check out the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, scroll down till you see the Locked On Pelicans logo, and then just click on it. It'll walk you through everything you need to sign up for it. Really great league coverage as well. I'm actually learning a lot from the articles that are posted in there too. So let's get back to the Pelicans' 128-100 loss. I'm going to laugh in this segment a lot. 128-100 loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. You're playing the best team in the NBA on the second night of a back-to-back. Brandon Ingram is ruled out with doesn't even matter. They said an ankle injury. Look, it's the second night of a back-to-back. They were punting this game. You have Trey Murphy, didn't play in this one because of the hamstring injury. He's clearly not playing back-to-backs. Yves Missi almost didn't play in this game. Just nuts. I ran some of the math here. So the Pelicans' total salary, I haven't updated my cap sheet in a couple of days with the news of Alfred Payton waiving Jalen Noel and all of that. But the Pelicans have a total salary of just right around $173 million. $173 million is about the Pelicans' total salary right now. The amount of salary that was missing from the guys who didn't play in this game is $160 million. They basically had somewhere between $12 and $13 million in salary playing. That's it. The luxury tax threshold is basically 171. This team the 8 guys that didn't play in this, not only are the top 8 guys for New Orleans, but put you almost in the luxury tax just themselves, not filling out the rest of the roster. Think about that for a second. No Zion Williamson, no Brandon Ingram, no CJ McCollum, no DeJounte Murray, no Trey Murphy, no Herb Jones, no Jose Alvarado, no Jordan Hawkins. That's nuts. Look, the expectation is not to win this game. And for all of the criticism that I do have for Willie Green, and I think there's a lot of valid criticism to levy at him, there was nothing he could do in this game. The Pelicans had a putrid third quarter. They had 6 points until about 5-6 minutes left, right? They did not score in that quarter whatsoever. They lost it 18-36. It was about as bad of a quarter as you're going to see an NBA team ever have. But what are they supposed to do when these are the injuries that you're dealing with? And I think when you kind of put it in that context, it's fine. They just let go of the rope in that quarter. They turned the ball over a good bit. They looked completely lost. When you're missing that much in salary, your literal top 8 guys in your rotation, there ain't nothing you're going to be able to do. It's really as simple as that. Right now, with all the injuries this team has, look, you can make a valid argument to tank or not tank. It doesn't matter. The expectation should not be to win games right now. That's truthfully the situation they find themselves in. Now, we might see CJ McCollum play on Friday. That would be a really big deal. And you'll get a couple of other guys soon after that. Herb Jones, Jordan Hawkins, DeJounte Murray. Trey's fine to play. So is Brandon Ingram. They'll get guys back and get healthy. Now you can maybe throw Antonio Reeves into all of that. But the expectation should not be winning games till they get significantly healthier than they are right now. This is about as rough as it truly gets. That said, if you want some analysis on this game, they've got to do better in certain areas. Ty Jerome in this game scored 29 points, was the leading scorer for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was 10 of 19, 7 for 12 from 3. Do you know who Ty Jerome is? If you don't, I completely get it. But this is not someone that really should have been burning the New Orleans Pelicans whatsoever. Right? That's the type of thing that you do control. There's a lot you don't. These injuries are going to just mean you're worse. But you control your effort. And at times, the Pelicans did not exhibit good effort in the third quarter. You can at least try on the defensive side of the ball. They did not when it came to Ty Jerome in this game. Those are things that do need to be cleaned up. That's a really important thing. And New Orleans did not do a good job of that whatsoever. And that is truly a very disappointing thing to see. Ty Jerome in his career so far has played for 4 teams. He's been in the league. This is his 6th year. He's a limited player, right? To go out and let him just waltz right into the paint and score on you isn't really an okay thing. And that's some criticism for Willie Green getting the team ready. It also literally has to do with talent. Who's the good defender out there on the court for New Orleans, right? Like, who's the good defender? Javonte Green? That's really it in terms of the players that they have available to them in this game. So it's really tough to find fault when your top 8 rotation guys are out, when $160 million in salary is missing, and only about $12, $13 million in salary is playing. Like, there's just, I can't even comprehend like how strange that is. And truthfully, like, I don't find a ton of fault for New Orleans with this. You can point to the training staff, all that stuff, the medical staff. They revamped a lot of that. They have. They were healthy last year. This year, they aren't. You know, it's tough to kind of square those two things together. It is what it is. And until they get healthy, when you're missing that kind of salary, that kind of production. And none of those players are bad, right? It's not like it's a massive overpay for a player there where you're like, that guy's making $30 million. He sucks. None of those guys suck, no matter what you think about Zion or Ingram or CJ or any of that stuff, right? Like, those salaries, I do think, are completely valid for those players. There is nothing you can do. Now, maybe that means you should tank, except they're going to get some of these guys back sooner rather than later. And that's going to really make a difference for this team. For all the criticism, Willie Green, there's not a whole lot to be done here, right? Like, he can't make guys that aren't good defenders become better defenders. You look at some of the turnovers that they have, like, these guys just aren't that good, or they're good in different roles, or they're good with other star players out there on the court. But when you're running out a starting lineup of Brandon Boston Jr., Alfred Payton, Yves Missi, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and Javonte Green, we should not expect good things. Brandon Boston Jr. didn't come to training camp with New Orleans. He was signed as a 2-way, like, right before the season started. Alfred Payton was literally signed yesterday and started. More on him in a minute. Yves Missi was a rookie that we thought was going to take a while to develop. He's come around a whole lot quicker than we thought. 12 points, 8 rebounds for him. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl should not be playing almost 35 minutes in a game. He's shown some life, some activity recently, but let's not pretend here. Javonte Green was a minimum guy. We like those minimum guys, but they're minimum guys for a reason. So we like them, I think we tend to overvalue those kind of players, though. That lineup has one defender in it, in Javonte Green, and then you look at Antonio Reeves, Jamal Cain, Trey Jemison, Karl Makovich are the other guys that played. Who's the defender? Who's supposed to stop Ty Jerome? Now, Ty Jerome isn't anyone special either, and they're making him look better, so there's something to be said for that too. But overall, when you're missing just that amount of salary and production, like, it's the shrug emoji. Like, what are we supposed to do here, right? It even makes doing the show difficult. Now, I always think there are interesting things to look at with the team, hence Antonio Reeves. I'll talk about Elfrid Payton in a minute, which I think speaks a lot about the roster construction of this team as well and what they need. But it's not easy when there's not tons of bright spots and things like that. And you're just seeing that. Everyone's just going to kind of have to smile, and we kind of grit it up and get through this, and it'll get better. Now, the Pelicans might be in too deep of a hole then, but it'll get better. Can't be this bad all the time. So that's where we stand with the injuries and everything. So coming up next, I don't know what's going on here, but the lights are flickering in my room. Coming up next, let's look at Alfred Payton making an NBA return after 2 years. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Chime. We've kind of all hit a point in our lives where we really need to take control of our finances. I actually used to work for a bank and used to work in finance, and I saw people just with no money and in bad situations. And honestly, that's kind of like the biggest motivator I've ever had in my life, to make sure I don't end up in a financial situation like that. But sometimes you need a little bit of help when it comes to it. So take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, and getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. You can learn more over at chime.com/NBA. Chime helps you make progress with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is just applied to your balance. You get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals, and they have no monthly fees or maintenance fees, so you're not getting nickel and dimed like that. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. So set up a direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying direct deposit of $200 or more, Chime will notify you of enrollment in SpotMe. And when an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance, and your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. And Chime never charges fees or interest for using SpotMe. So make your fall finances a little bit greener by working towards your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and available on YouTube as well. We are the #1 daily podcast for a reason. And now for your second listen, Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. Still new coaching change. Can Rizzy keep the job? Ross Jackson letting you know everything you need to know about the New Orleans Saints over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's wrap up the show with just a cool story, but something that I do think says like a lot about this team. And that was Alfred Payton starting this game. It's been 2 years since Alfred Payton played in the NBA. He last played in 2022. That's a pretty incredible thing here. So to see him go out and play like he did was truly awesome. And look, just to step on the court and play well, I think is speaks to just, you don't need to get ready when you stay ready, right? Like that's kind of the attitude and everything. And I think you saw some of that here with Alfred Payton in this game. Really cool to be able to see him perform like he did. It also had an impact on some of the other guys, if you noticed that. Look at how well Yves Missi played with a point guard like Alfred Payton. Look at how well guys like Jeremiah Robinson, Earl, and other guys were just able to cut because Alfred Payton was looking for them and moving the ball. That really does make a world of difference, it feels like. And to see him go out and play like he did shows less about Alfred Payton, in my opinion, I think here. And one of the bigger things is that it was about this team needing a point guard, right? We heard a lot about them this whole offseason needing a point guard and wanting to go make a move and doing something along those lines. And they did, and brought in Alfred Payton, and it was DeJounte Murray, and you can see why they went for that sort of move. That was a really important thing for this team. They went out and they acquired that guy because they thought it unlocked him. Look at how much better things looked, at least in that first and second quarter for New Orleans, with Alfred Payton out there on the court. DeJounte Murray is going to make a very, very big difference for this Pelicans team when he's out there on the court and healthy. He's going to unlock someone like Yves Missi a little bit more. Maybe means better minutes for Trey Jemison or Carlo Makovich. Carlo, by the way, a really nice pin down block. He's going to make the life better for everybody because Alfred Payton stepped in and had 8 assists in this game in 22 minutes, 2 years after playing his last NBA game. That's a really important just archetype type of player for this team. And that's why they kind of mortgaged a lot, right? Dyson Daniels was playing some excellent basketball. Other first-round picks included in that deal, a depth piece in Larry Nance Jr., because they realized how important a point guard was. Now, they tried to use Jalen Noel in that way, and he wasn't it. So I wonder if they should have made this move sooner because, look, Alfred Payton has been around the team since training camp, basically. Never really went away. And has kind of been ready to go should they need him. So to sign him and then start him and to see the impact he made, I think has been a really good thing for this team and will be till they get DeJounte Murray back. And then we'll see what they end up doing with Elfrid Payton. But he might stay on there until Jose Alvarado comes back because that's truly who the backup point guard is. But Payton's a different kind of pass-first type of player that they definitely need, just looking to make life easier for his teammates. Look at the lob that you saw him throw to Yves Missi in that first quarter. You never see lobs on this team. To have a guy that just can come out and do it that easily is a really encouraging sign for them trying to win some games and maybe get back into it when they're not just playing like when they don't have 8 guys that are massively important out. They need a point guard. They identified that. We all saw it last season. They got one, and then he hasn't played since the opening game, and that's been just really, really rough for this squad. Maybe Elfrid Payton can stem some of the bleeding for a little bit, but it shows you the need for a point guard to make these people's lives a little bit easier and have someone run your offense, and Elfrid Payton really stepped in. How cool is it just seeing a New Orleans local who played in-state, played for this team before where he had a bunch of triple-doubles, and then to come in 2 years after his last NBA game, basically 2 years, and have almost 10 assists. He almost had a double-double in his NBA return. You see the old Fleur de Bee tattoo that he has on his shoulder. Like, got that in, high school, college, when they were still the Hornets. Like, that's how local the dude is. That's really, truly awesome to see. So it's just a really great, fun story, too. It's an easy guy to root for, and I know we're all going to be doing that going forward. So hopefully we see more from Elfrid Payton, at least until DeJounte Murray returns, because he definitely can be a difference maker for this team. Let me know what you thought about Payton's performance in the comments down below about this game and Antonio Reeves. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Rough back-to-back game, but you kind of understand it now with the salary and all that they're missing. Tomorrow, maybe we'll look at some more tanking and what the Pelicans need to do going forward, especially because they're going to be getting some guys back soon. What's the pace they need to play with? How many games do they need to win? Is that truly a feasible thing? Let's look at that in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And that's going to do it. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll be back with you all tomorrow to get you set for the weekend.